Our next speaker of today has worked on some really well-known games. They're among Brutal Legend, Spore, and The Cave. She's currently working at Campo Santo and was the lead artist on the beautiful Firewatch. So please welcome Jane Ng.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jane Ng, and I'm the lead artist at Campo Santo. We're a small studio in San Francisco, California, and we shipped our first game, Firewatch, last year in February of 2016. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone at Konsoll for inviting me here. It's lovely being here in Bergen. I've heard so many great things about this conference, so I'm very honored to be part of it this year. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about making Firewatch and the decisions we've made along the way. I was the 3D artist on the team pretty much on day one, but I'm not going to specifically talk just about the art today. So I apologize if you were hoping to hear more about the art side of things, but I've done a couple of talks at GDC about it. Those are free to view online now, so go check those out if you want to hear about the art side. But instead of repeating myself today, I want to take this opportunity to share some more stories from development with you that I've never had a chance to talk about elsewhere. So yeah, brand new stuff. Okay, so today's talk will be in 3 parts because I couldn't think of a clever way to just link it all into one, so bear with me. Act 1 will be sort of about how Campo Santo got started and about my personal decision to join them. Act 2 will be about some of the major product decisions we've had to make during Firewatch development. So Campo Santo self-published this game, so hopefully these lessons will also be very applicable to anyone out there who will be publishing their game, no matter what kind of game you're making. And then Act 3, I will be talking about why we decided to approach Firewatch more than a game, like a brand. Okay. So before I jump into Act 1, let me tell you a bit about myself. I started making games in 2001, so yes, a long time ago. But my career really started in 2003 when I joined EA working on their first, actually the 3rd Lord of the Rings game as a junior artist. From there, I became one of the lead artists on The Godfather, which was their first open world game. And then I also worked on Spore, which was all about procedural content. So after 4 years at EA, I decided to quit AAA, because these were all really big teams. And I wanted a change of pace, and I decided to join a company I've long admired, Double Fine, which you probably all know. So when I joined Double Fine, we were all working on Brutal Legend. And I actually joined Double Fine one day before Lee Petty, which was funny, and Lee will be giving his workshop later today. And then I also worked on Lee's game, Stacking. That was really fun. And then I was also the lead artist on The Cave. And then in 2013, I ended my 6 years at Double Fine and joined the then very new company, Campo Santo. Okay. So now, officially, Act 1, about Campo Santo and why I decided to quit a stable job to join this startup. So I've always thought the origin story of indie studios to be very fascinating, because no 2 stories are the same, but people, for some reason, don't really talk too much about it. So I want to spend a few minutes today just to tell our story and why I decided to join. So Campo Santo was started by 2 guys, Sean Fanneman and Jake Rodkin. They were the co-project leads of Walking Dead Season 1 from Telltale. And they have been working at Telltale a few years before then, working on stuff that was not as big of a hit. So that game was a huge success for them and the studio. And it showed the two of them that not only was there a thirst for narrative games in the gaming audience, there was also a space in the market for story-based games to be commercial success. But they also know that at that point, Telltale is a company that primarily works with licenses. So if they ever wanted to tell their own stories, they would likely have to do it outside of Telltale. Now, starting a company is really hard, and they knew that the best time to do such a thing would probably be right after they've won a bunch of awards from Walking Dead. Because, at that point, the directors of the Walking Dead game would get them into lots of meetings, and lots of folks would actually answer their phone calls. It's actually quite unusual for a game company to be started by two non-technical folks. Sean is a writer, and Jake is a creative director, whose background is in UI design. And between the two of them, they can't really program themselves out of a bag. So when I first heard that they were starting a new company, I was like, okay, so are they just overly idealistic? Or are they actually stupid? So I decided to meet with them anyway because I was honestly quite curious. And also because, directors of the Walking Dead game. And I thought, hey, even if it's a crappy meeting, at least I will get to know some interesting folks. So I had no idea what to expect when I first met them, but we ended up having a 5-hour conversation. Totally forgot to even eat dinner, so we were kind of drunk. But in those 5 hours, we just really chatted about who we were as creative folks, what our goals were, and what we wanted to achieve as game makers. And I found out that we actually had a lot in common, that we all wanted to tell stories, and we were at that point interested in telling stories that are more sort of adult themed. And by adult theme, I didn't mean like in the sexy way. I meant in the what do you experience as adults? Things that adults have to deal with, that kind of stuff. So at that point, I realized, okay, they are definitely idealistic, but you know what, actually quite practical. Their decision to start a company seemed super risky, but they also had done some serious thinking behind it. So they knew what they needed, which was a whole team of good technical folks in both art and programming. And but they also knew what they had, which was a lot of Walking Dead street cred that drew a lot of the talent with such technical know-how to them. And I remember going home after that 5-hour conversation and asking myself, so what do I want out of my career? I had a very comfortable life back then at Double Fine. It's a very fun workplace. I loved everyone there. And I could honestly have spent the rest of my career just being happy at Double Fine. But part of me also wondered, was I just afraid of change? Or maybe my comfort was really just stagnation, and maybe all that was just hiding a fear that I'm just slowly becoming irrelevant if I don't learn new things, all the things you start to worry about when you've been in an industry for a while. So basically, I didn't really know what was important to me. And one of the things that, out of the 5-hour conversation, that really stuck out to me was that Sean and Jake seemed to really know what was important to them. They wanted to start their own company because they wanted to tell their own stories, but it was also really important to them to have the freedom to do what they felt was the right thing, and to treat people the way that they felt like people should be treated without having to answer to VCs or other higher-up folks who might not share those values. And that is not usually the kind of thing you hear from people who start companies and want to recruit you, because usually it's more like this, check out how wonderful our finance packages and free perks. Yeah, like join us. Not usually like, oh, we want to live by our values. And when Sean and Jake showed me the concepts of Firewatch, I was already like, oh, that's really pretty. I really kind of want to make that, spend time doing that. But it was really when they talked about how they wanted to run the company that I got seriously interested. So the side effect of two founders being non-technical folks was that there was a very genuine understanding that this game is not going to be about them, that without the team, that there would be no game, and that decisions about the game and in many ways how the company would be run would be a group effort. And they wanted a flat structure, and they promised that everyone would have a say. And at that point, I realized, you know what, having some ownership in how a company would be run, having a say beyond my art responsibilities was actually really important to me. And at that point, those things was becoming more important than just comfort and stability. And so I said yes. I said yes to a 40% pay cut, which is huge. But actually that was how much Sean and Jake was paying themselves, which I thought was very fair. And that sense of fairness and trust, along with a very shared sense of risk and adventure, was what made me do that leap of faith, along with 10 other Campo Santos who felt the same way. And I want to stress that I know this origin story is not run-of-the-mill. And I know we were very lucky to have all those opportunities, and that we had that flexibility to say yes to like big risks and like pay cuts when it presented itself. So definitely a lot of luck involved. And without that kind of luck, our best laid plans and the best decisions we could have made could still not amount to anything. But against all odds, in the end, this leap of faith worked out for us. Creatively, we are so proud of the game that we made, and we're so happy that the game resonated with people on an emotional level in a way that was beyond what we ever could hope for. And financially, it worked out great too. Next slide. Okay, there we go. Financially, it made back its investment in one day. It sold 500,000 copies in the first month. And to date, it has sold more than 1.5 million copies. And so we're incredibly lucky to be financially stable, to be making our second game. And now, in Act 2, I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about the decisions that I think really helped make Firewatch go from being a very risky idea. I mean, it is about an overweight man in a spooky forest, so not exactly blockbuster sort of theme there. So these decisions, I think, helped turn that idea into something that really can sustain our creative endeavors going forward. Okay, so Act 2, I'm going to call these product decisions. So obviously, game development is all just a big series of decisions, but today I'm going to focus on a very small subset of decisions that I feel like developers don't actually share lessons enough about. I call these product decisions. And these days, it's a very complicated game market out there. Even if you have an objectively great game, it's not enough. If you want to sell your game on any marketplace, you have to grapple with the fact that your game will be seen as a product, and product decisions like these will make or break your studio. It's totally even irrelevant to how great your game actually is. And I'm going to walk through how Campo Santo approached these 4 decisions with Firewatch. So, number 1, Let's start with partners. Okay, so partners here, I'm talking about maybe a publisher, a funding partner, or a console platform partner. So I'm starting with this decision point because picking an external group to work with on this level, in my opinion, is very similar to deciding if you should have someone join your team or if you want to join another team. So be picky. And you may be very tempted to say, well, I can't afford to be picky because I have very few options. But the thing is, you have to realize what you really can't afford is to work with the wrong partner. So at their best, an external partner can be like a trusted coworker with superpowers. But at worst, they can misrepresent you, flush your hard work down the drain, and maybe even take all your money. So how do you go about choosing who to partner with? In my opinion, you should first identify what you need, what you value, and then pick a partner that will support you in both. So Campo Santo had two major partners during development of Firewatch, Panic and Sony, and I will talk about both of them, but first, let's talk about Panic. So when Sean and Jake was forming Campo Santo, they knew that they wanted to pay employees to work on the game full-time in a physical studio space, which means they needed a funding partner. And in comes Panic. Now, so a bit about Panic. They are a very successful Mac software company in Oregon, which is a little north of California. And they're very similar to Campo Santo in that they are run by two friends, and they're very passionate about their work. And their software include Transmit and Coda if you use that in Mac. And they have about, I think, 20 employees or so, so a very small company. And the main difference between them and Campo is that they've been around for a while, I think since the 90s, and also they have an excess of money that they're looking to invest in other things. So Jake actually knew them from, I think also in the 90s, when he was basically making fan art for their software. I know, right? But so that's how they knew them, and they've been keeping in touch throughout the years because they're nice people. But when Jake and Sean was thinking of starting Campo Santo, they were just asking all these people who've started companies for advice, and so that was when they reconnected. And so one thing led to another, and then you realize, oh, you know what? Oh, we're very compatible, and all that became a funding relationship. So the one thing that we had in common is that Panic was really keen on letting us have all the creative control. It was actually written in the contract that they're obligated to keep funding us even if they don't like our creative decisions, which is like the strangest contract, but actually they wanted to put it in there to make sure that the understanding is that they're not going to hold the purse string over our heads, and they really wanted to just give us the freedom to do what we think is right. And because of that, it actually turned this whole relationship into something super collaborative and transparent. Because normally you think of partnerships maybe something as like, oh, you have to hide something from your publisher or something in case they don't want to see it. But this was exactly the opposite, because we know they can't not fund us, that we basically end up showing them everything, and we show them a lot of stuff to ask for feedback, and then in turn they felt like they could give us really honest feedback, which was really great. And they also benefited from having a very close look at how we approach making games, because that was kind of part of the reason why they wanted to partner with us, because they knew how to make Mac software, but they don't really know how games are made, and they were really curious. So in short, Campo Santo needed money. Panic had some extra money they wanted to invest. Great. they wanted to see how games are made, and we were very eager to show them. So that was really great shared values there. Okay, so another way that they helped us that we totally didn't expect was that folks at Panic was just super into creating events, which was strange coming from a software company. But during GDC 2015, so around March, that was about when we wanted to first show the public a playable demo of the game. So at first we were like, okay, I guess we'll just get a booth in GDC. It's, maybe it's not the best idea, but we have to do it some way. And then they were like, but how about we just throw a party? And we're like, really? If you want to do that, great. So they rented out this event space, which is just about 3 blocks from GDC, and just went nuts, and decked it out to be like a set of Firewatch. Yeah. So, oops, that was too fast, but let me see if I can go back. No. Okay. Yeah, so they even rented props, and then made part of the part of the area look like a bit from the lookout. And we had that open for maybe 2 days, and it was free to the public. So about 1,000 people showed up. And they had fun playing the game. We made them fill out a little form to tell us what they thought. But also a lot of game press came just because they were curious, and I think that really helped create the initial interest in the game. And another thing that Panic did that was unexpected and awesome was Photodome. So when we first told them, hey, we were thinking about having an in-game camera for Henry to, take pictures in the game. Henry is the protagonist. And Panic was like, oh, that is really awesome. How about we make it so that people can print out their photos like in the 80s? And we were like, that sounds amazing, but we have to finish the game. And then they were like, oh, I know, but how about we make it? Is that okay? And we're like, of course. So they actually did most of the work behind Photodome. We just gave them the hooks in the game so that they can get the data. But they did the website, all the back-end stuff, and they even, so Cable was one of the owners of Panic. He researched who would still print the, those photo envelopes. I don't know if you have it in Norway the same way, but in the US they have those old school envelopes, and they found someone who still does it. So it is a real thing, but then they also had them pre-fill out the name Henry on there, and then those printers were very confused. They were like, wait, why do you want to pre-print the name on the end? But they were like, it's okay, just do what we say. So he figured all that out, and then bought photo printers, so they were actually printing all of those in their own office. So you could buy that in the game. Only on Steam, unfortunately. We couldn't get it to work on the PS4 version. But anyway, that's all Panic. So yeah, like I said, if you have a really good partner, they're like the coworker with the superpower. Superpower being crazy photo ideas and renting trees to make a party space. So that was awesome. And we're just really happy that they were really, really thrilled about being part of this whole project. And that Firewatch did it really well, so it also did really well for them. So we're genuinely happy that everyone was happy in that situation. Okay, so let's talk about the other partnership now, which is Sony. Yeah, okay. So about midway into development, potential console platform partners started to want to talk to us. And console platform partnerships usually mean a certain console platform exclusivity in exchange for money or services. So we decided to work with Sony because Sony third party at the time was very passionate about indie games, and we felt that they really understood what indie games were about, what we were about, and they were just really keen to amplify us on their particular platform. And they offered us marketing reach and exposure that it's just like no money can buy. And since we already had Panic as a funding partner, we thought like their offer of marketing and outreach support was exactly what we needed to fill our needs. And so we exchanged it for a 6-month exclusivity agreement. And it was honestly totally fine with us because we were a small team. We couldn't really imagine doing a simultaneous console platform launch anyway. That would just be too much for the team. So agreeing to that was honestly not a big deal. Oops, okay. All right, so a little bit about what they offered us. The big thing was that they included it in their big E3 2015 keynote, which was really unexpected, but they were like, okay, we will do this if you guys will make like a trailer for us. And we were like, that's fine, we will totally do it. And so we just made that crazy trailer like it was a milestone. We just spent 2 weeks on it. And it was nuts because they have this insane screen that almost like wrapped around, and you could make use of the whole thing, and Jake went nuts doing it. It was really cool. And they also gave us a free booth at their first PSX, which is called the PlayStation Experience, which is, I think, like a 3-day sort of mini convention that was Sony only. And so like thousands of people came to our booth and played with the game, and it was free, and it was local in San Francisco, so it was really easy for us. And it was also our first convention, so we sort of used that opportunity to test out, okay, how do we sell merch? How do we just like make a booth? Because it's actually kind of hard to make a booth. So there was that. And also Sony included us in their winter 2016 retail kiosk. So these things are in like, I don't even know how many, like thousands of GameStop and all electronic stores in the US. So basically, I think any place that sells the PS4 would probably have one of these. And so we were one of the games featured in there with a playable demo for like 3 months, which was during our launch window, which was amazing because those are probably a lot of people we would never have been able to reach out to. And then also, they featured us on their PlayStation blog, which they claim has millions of followers, which I'm not going to question that. And then also on their social media splash pages during launch week. So yeah, the key thing is that while Sony is doing all that for obviously the PS4 version, since we were doing a simultaneous launch on Steam, all that effort, all the marketing, all the stuff that we didn't have to do other than to give them the pretty pictures, like all elevate, the Steam version as well. So if we didn't partner with Sony and only released on Steam, I don't really know how we could have had nearly a fraction of all this marketing. So we were really happy about that relationship for this particular reason. Okay, so I'm not going to go into some other partners. If you have any questions about Unity, you can ask me in the Q&A or whatever. We don't just have two, but I call them our major partners. But like obviously the Unity is another big one because we use their engine. And we also really like working with Research Center. They did our cert QA for the Sony submission. We really like them and really want to work with them more in the future. And Nunico is our fulfillment center for all our merch stuff. And all these people are great. And I consider them partners, not just like a business relationship, because these folks really get what we're about. And there's a lot more of a give and take than just like, okay, we give you money and you give services. Like, I feel like it's really important if you're in indie studio to cultivate these kind of relationships and see them more than just like people you're paying so that they do stuff for you. Okay, let me check. Okay, now on to big product decision number 2, which is your launch date. So I get the sense that sometimes indie developers or even games with publishers just release a game whenever it's done. And that is not a great way to do it, in my opinion. You need to have a strategy. And you need to announce your date ahead of time to build up that kind of excitement and anticipation for your game. But the other thing is there's only really one launch, so you really have to do it right. We at Campo Santo are very picky about our launch date. And we sometimes work on our whole schedule from a launch date we've targeted, and we sort of just like work backwards from there. Okay, so picking a launch date sometimes is first about making sure you avoid a certain date. So number one, try to avoid November and December, because those are the dates when a lot of AAA titles are coming out because, of the holidays. And just don't even try to compete for eyeballs when all the big companies are throwing all their millions of dollars at everyone. And if you're going to be launching on Steam, I would personally suggest avoiding any time around the summer sale, because everyone knows about the summer sale. It's a big thing. And people will probably start not even thinking about buying games in even May. Like, I don't really have the data to support this, but I feel like that's the anecdotal thing that people tell people not to do. And also another thing is, you may also want to consider whether you want to participate in a summer sale after your launch, and if so, like when. If you have that kind of flexibility, like if you want to participate in a summer sale, then you probably want to at least launch maybe even 2 or 3 months ahead, because you don't want to get into the thing of selling your game at full price and then a month later get on sale, because then it's not a good look, and people will get pissed that, oh, what, it's already on sale, what the heck. So definitely keep that in mind. And avoid launching too close to similar titles. That seems obvious, but maybe not. So, of course, the best time then is to ship when nothing much is going on, including no similar games. But yeah, that's a great thing to aim for. So how do you even try to aim for that window, though? Some tips. That ask other developers. So there's a lot of open secrets in developer circles that is not reported by the game press and all that. So a lot of times people know who is releasing what, or at least like about when. So if you want to know things, just like try to ask around. Sometimes people will just tell you, or be like, oh, this is who to ask, or whatever. People are usually very friendly. There's a lot of what we call friend DAs in the industry. So yes, definitely ask. And if you have a console platform partner, definitely ask them, because they definitely know, because they've signed agreements with many companies to know exactly these things. Okay. All right. Okay, so I don't know why I was doing this. Okay. Right, so Firewatch began development in January 2014, and we were originally hoping for October 2015 launch. But by early August, I would say, we kind of knew we would miss 2015. Because at that point, we realized that we have to rewrite about the last 1/3 of the game. And it was impossible to line up a date before November. So for financial reasons, we knew we needed to make the next good window, which in our estimation would be in February of 2016. So since shipping on console is just a lot more cumbersome, we were immediately worried about that. Okay, would we make that in time for the whole Sony cert process? Because it takes like 8 weeks, or they tell you it might take 8 weeks. So about in October, when we were reasonably confident that the rewrite is going to make the game better than at least like what we had in the summer, we started reaching out to Sony to ask them, okay, please give us some advice. And that's exactly what they told us. And I have it was like, they do give you a lot of information. So Sony knew that the witness, and so they showed this to us in October, yes. They knew the witness was coming out, and they have an agreement with witness. So they were like, okay, so just avoid the 2 weeks around the witness launch. That Battleborn was going to come out on February 9th. They don't specifically have any sort of marketing agreement with them, so that was pretty open. February 16th, there's a big exclusive PlayStation game coming out. They didn't tell us what title it was. We later find out it's Street Fighter. And then also Mirror's Edge would be coming out on the 23rd, and the 30th was empty, but it was getting close to basketball season, so they might just be like doing basketball stuff. And so we were like, we really kind of need to ship as soon as possible for budgetary reasons. And we were like, okay, I guess, how about releasing it the same day as Battleborn? We figured, if you're interested in Battleborn, it's not exactly the same demographic we're looking for. So we were like, okay, we'll pick the 9th. So I know this might be like a strange format because this means February 9th. And I think for you guys, it looks like it's September 2nd, but it's not. It's February. But to our luck, after we just like blindly say, okay, the 9th, Battleborn and Mirror's Edge both got delayed, which is like, yes, which contributed to Firewatch magically becoming the top download game on the PS4 in February, which was crazy. So yeah, asking your console partner definitely helps. Also, luck just helps out a lot here for sure. But yeah, that really paid off. Okay, so now let's talk about launch price. So here I'm obviously speaking from an American developer's perspective. So pricing here, I have to quote just US dollars. And so keep in mind here that maybe there's some regional pricing differences, but I'm just gonna speak to what I know. Okay, so pricing is always a tough decision because no matter how low you price your game, there will be some people who will think it's too expensive. Oh my God, this should be free. People just complain. Even people complain about free games, so what can you do? And also remember that some people will refund no matter what. So my advice is just don't worry too much about those people. They tend to be the really loud people, but don't forget, they're probably a small minority. Okay, so if you ignore these people, who should you listen to? You listen to, your gut. Sometimes you should also ignore yourself. I say that because if you worked really hard for your game, in your mind, your game is going to be worth a lot because it is very valuable to you, right? But beware the tendency to want to price it according to how you personally value your creation. I will caution against it because you will be very biased. And you will need to try your best to see this from your potential customer's perspective. Yeah, so my initial gut reaction was like, Firewatch is at least a $25 game. I'm really glad we didn't price it at that. But so, I would say a good approach would be to think of a few games who you would like to consider your peers. Like for us, I just randomly picked these 4. I'm sure we've talked about a lot of other games when we were thinking about this, but pick games that are like, okay, these are indie games that are made by small teams, story-rich or atmospheric and art-forward. So we feel comfortable, being considered to be similar to these games. And they all launched at $19.99 US dollars. So there's an indication that maybe you should consider launching at a similar price range, or the same price range, I should say. And the other thing is you try to then consider what that price range would get people who are not playing your game, but like no games. So $19.99 in US dollars in the States will get you about a Blu-ray DVD of a pretty recent movie, or like a movie ticket with popcorn. And we're like, I think as an entertainment product, Firewatch, that's a good value proposition there. So that's what we went with. Now, I would also suggest to give fans who do feel like your game is worth more money than your list price a way to actually give you more money. So what we did, actually, we were told to do this by, I think, Supergiant, and we're very thankful for that advice, is to make easy bundles. Like we did the soundtrack edition, which magically is priced at $25, which is my happy dollar value. But really, it is actually not that much work. If you already have a soundtrack, just like make a little sort of different SKU, and you have like a higher price point thing that people can feel like, oh, we like them, I want to give them a little more money. The maybe surprising thing is that during our launch week, I think, at least the launch week, about half the purchases were of the higher priced bundle. So yeah, so yay. So I'm glad there's quite a few number of people who also believe that it's worth $25. Okay, so some more additional tips on pricing. It's just random tips. So all that talk aside, don't set your launch price too low, because you can always discount down, but you can't really raise your prices after you've set it. Yes, that's what I just said. And actually think a little bit about whether you want to do pre-orders or not, because I know some people just like automatically go, of course you do a pre-order, but like why? Like, do you actually need the money? We were originally not going to do any pre-orders because we were hoping that we want to concentrate all that excitement at the press buy button on day one, so it would push Firewatch up the sales chart. Because as you know, once something is in the top 10 or top 20 charts, then its position on that chart will just keep generating more interest. So we're hoping to like concentrate it on the launch week. But that said, sometimes life is surprising, and we found out just days before the launch that Steam was doing a brand new sale called the Lunar New Year sale, and we were like, crap, why are you doing a sale when we're launching? But they gave us the opportunity to join in, so we did a 10% off sort of like launch discount, but that also worked out for us. But I think if we had a choice, we were not going to do a pre-order. Anyway, so roll with it if you do have a chance like that. Okay, now number 4, localization. Okay, so when I say localization, again, I'm speaking from an American developer's perspective, which means the game is defaulted to English in voice, UI, and subtitles. And for Firewatch, the plan was always just to localize the text, so just the UI and the subtitles. And this section, I'm going to use a lot of Steam data, because Steam is still our primary platform, and primary storefront, I should say, primary storefront. And also a lot of that data is publicly available, so you can check out other games' data on that. So in the US, when people bring up localization, people usually talk about the EFIX market, and it stands for English, French, Italian, German, and Spanish. And a lot of localization companies just even give you sort of EFIX packages, like a one-stop shop. Oh, I'll just localize this, and then you pay the money, and they do it. But does EFIX actually make sense anymore? Let's look at who is actually using Steam now. Okay, 2 charts. The chart on the left is Steam users by country, and the one on the right is Steam games, I guess owned games by country. So clearly that means Americans just own a lot of games that they don't really play. But joke aside, seriously though, I was really surprised when I saw the chart on the left that there's that many folks from Russia and China who use Steam. In particular China, because Steam was only officially allowed to be in China in 2015. So in 2 years, that became their third biggest market, which is nuts. Okay, so after looking at this data and talking to other indies, and again, shout out to Supergiant and Clay, who we talk with a lot on these things, we did not go with the standard efix, and instead we did French, German, Spanish, Russian, and simplified Chinese. So sorry, Italians. And here is the breakdown of Firewatch owners on Steam by country. So the first line there is the US, which is about 34%, and then China is amazingly 9% of our sales. I mean, their pricing is different there, so it's not, you can't equate, like, okay, that means dollar-wise is the same amount, but like in terms of copies sold, it is like way higher than I thought it would be. And I've heard from other developers that China is becoming a big market for them, especially if you do the step of localization. So yeah, there you go. Okay, now Act 3, which is Firewatch. That's a brand. And the funny thing here is that that font choice is really off-brand, but I got lazy and I didn't want to import our font, so I was like, okay, well, just don't tell Jake because he would probably kill me. Anyway, let's talk about branding. What is branding? I didn't know how to explain it well, so I'm just going to quote from entrepreneur.com. So branding is one of the most important aspects of any business, large or small, retail or B2B, I guess business to business. An effective brand strategy gives you a major edge in increasingly competitive markets. But what exactly does branding mean? How does it affect a small business like yours? Simply put, your brand is your promise to your customer. It tells them what they can expect from your products and services, and it differentiates your offering from your competitors. Your brand is derived from who you are, who you want to be, and who people perceive you to be. Now, why is branding important for game developers? Because for a lot of us, our storefront regularly looks like this. It is really hard to break through the noise. And if a potential sort of customer is confronted by literally hundreds of thousands of choices in this format, having recognizable visual branding will really help you break through. Now, good visual branding doesn't mean it needs to say in that tiny space what your game is. It just needs to be able to, like, in a split second, maybe remind people of, oh yeah, I've heard of this game, like in an article somewhere. Like, it just needs to help people remember the good things they've already heard about your game elsewhere, outside of this very limited, space. Now, the image here, which has no title of our game, not even our logo, but people still strongly identify it as a Firewatch image. In fact, sometimes just having that yellow or like a slice of that color gradient in layers is enough for people to go, oh yeah, that's the Firewatch thing. This is no accident. Like, we've actually been really trying to build upon this sort of recognition throughout the entire development. So from the get-go, Firewatch has been a very art-forward project. And we've kind of always went with the whole come for the art, but stay for the story kind of approach. It's not something we tacked on at the end. So this is actually one of the first key art we made. So the visual branding also helps the team to be like, okay, this is the feeling we're going for if this is what we want other people to see, like the game really needs to reflect this. It is very intentional to have a visual identity that grabs people's attention, that is also evocative of the game's sensibility. Now, Firewatch's art director, Ollie Moss, brought in a very unique graphic design aesthetic to the game's visual identity, which I think really helps separate us from the rest of the pack. And since you really don't see people in the game, our visual branding has always focused on the tone and the atmosphere of the experience. So think instead, like, unlike movie posters where one would expect like a very bombastic presentation of 5 celebrity faces like coming at you through the cloud and explosion, we went with more of a sort of book cover kind of aesthetic. And these are some artwork that is not specifically made for a marketing branding, but it still has the same sense of mystery, loneliness, and the great outdoors that we consider as very on-brand. And we want every bit of imagery associated with the game to have this exact same visual branding, so people just know that this is Firewatch. We want the brand to be like simple, but also have an unexpected level of quality. And this is our website, and it kind of scrolls like this. And we're really happy with it because it's simple, but also a little surprising. And this carries over to our merchandise as well. At Campo Santo, we see merchandise not actually as part of marketing, but we see it as a way for us to physically connect with our most supported fans. We take a lot of pride and time to design these, and we really like making products, so this is not a stretch. We really enjoy the process. We put a lot of thought into this, so we really obsess about how does the shirt feel? Does this paper feel good for this kind of size? All the little things, because they are just products first on their own. And so another thing is we actually don't put the URL of the game on any of this, because we just feel it's kind of tacky if you want to wear a shirt and it just has firewatchgame.com. I wouldn't want to wear a shirt like that, so we didn't put it on our shirt. So a little data point here that I think fans also really resonate with, that kind of care that you put into anything with your brand on it. Just on the online store, since we launched, we've done about $200,000 US worth of sales, and just on the merch. And this is not counting any sort of shows that we go to, so not counting PAX. That's a totally different accounting there. But also another interesting thing is the 2 most popular items, which is the vinyl and the art prints, they're both more expensive than the game. So yeah, awesome, right? People like these. And there is a surprising number of fans who like our branding so much that they really take it to heart and branded themselves with it. It really does blow me away that actually people resonate with our game so much that they want to really carry that feeling with them, literally. And that just seeing the logo and the key art alone is enough to remind them of an experience that clearly meant a lot to them. Okay, and here we are. Here's the end, and I will leave you with a few last concluding thoughts. So today I've talked a lot about decision making. So we as developers pour our heart and soul into our work, and sometimes it can be so busy that you just forget why we're even doing it. It's very easy to feel like you don't have time to think, and you're just like, okay, I'm just gonna do whatever I need to keep my head above water. But to me, being a successful game developer is not just about checking off tasks or even how many games you've shipped. Success to me is being able to make games that really make you happy, that you're really, truly proud of. But that kind of success requires you to know what you need and what is important to you. And it takes work to do things with intention and to make decisions with intention. So I urge you all to, once in a while, to pause in chasing whatever short-term task or goal you have in front of you. Step back and make the space to consciously put effort into identifying what your values are in this moment. And because you can only make the right decisions for yourself, your game, and your studio if you know how to make decisions that honor your values. And that's it. Thank you. Anyone have any questions? I guess you can ask me during lunch, so if we're hungry. But anybody with questions? I see hands. Okay.
Hi. First of all, thank you for a great talk. It's me right here. To your right. Yes.
Okay. Oh, hello. I see lights.
Thank you. Just a quick question for you. You're talking about decisions, and my question is really, did you, during your development, had to make some really tough decisions, and in what fields? Thank you.
I guess the toughest decision was when we decided the ending of the game was just crap. And then, as I briefly mentioned, in August, when we were going to show Panic sort of okay, this is what the game is, that coming back, we were like, oh, guys, this is not going to work. We decided just to rewrite the last third of the game. That was a really tough decision because we were hoping to make the October or 2015, because making that decision means financial things. It means we're missing a window and all this other stuff that is not just the quality of the game. So that means we had to ask ourselves, is it okay for us to sacrifice more things, maybe get more money, all this stuff, to give ourselves a shot to make the game better? But the thing is, the scary thing also is that you don't know, right? Because you know what you have is not what you want. But is it going to be better if you just give it another month? So we did decide to do that, and thank God, I think it is definitely a lot better. But that was a really tough decision. But I think it's just, we decided to do it when we put the whole team together, laid out, this is what we have, but what do we all want to do? Is it okay to sacrifice these things to try at one more shot to do something better? Okay. Yeah, I see more questions. I like questions. Also, if I don't get to answer your question, please just come up and ask me when you see me around. I love questions.
Hi. My name is Lawrence, and I'm a composer, so something of an artist like you. So I'm just thinking that you really mentioned in this presentation about sticking to your values and then finding with other people that you feel comfortable with, that you jive with. And as somebody who's already had that AAA experience that you've had, I feel that it probably was a little bit easier to approach this kind of stuff. But as somebody who's trying to get in, and it's always really tempting to be like, oh, maybe I should try to appeal to a mass market, to be a jack of all trades, master of none, especially with my music and all that. So how do you deal with that kind of balance, or is there not really, or yeah?
Sure. I think it's totally fine to also just go with, I don't even know who I want to work with. I feel like I personally arrive at the whole, I just want to want a family to work with. That came much later. I spent a lot of time in AAA, and actually, even though I'm not in AAA anymore, I don't regret spending time in AAA, because you just get to know so many people. You see a lot of different teams, because every even team in my example, within EA, they're all different, and you just get to see and work with a lot of people. And I feel like that experience gave me a lot of information on these are the ways people work, these are the different kind of people, and then you find out, I don't like that, or I like this, but this is not as great as I thought. You just have to learn sometimes. And just knowing that you're not sure, and you don't know, it's already a great start because that means you're giving yourself the permission to just learn from all these different people. But also make sure to ask yourself, if you're not sure, well, actually, even if you think you're sure, you should also ask yourself periodically, like, well, am I happy right now? Because sometimes you think, oh, well, I've always wanted to work with these people, so I should be happy. But sometimes, you might not actually be. And I think being in a habit to always ask yourself that question when you know you're not sure, or even when you think you're sure, it's a good exercise. Maybe like one more question. I don't know, you pick. Okay, I think I feel like I've seen your hand up for a while, so you can ask me after.
Well, it comes to most like for the game or like the art design. When it first came for like to first get the concept art for the game, what really came for the idea? Like, how did you plan the game to work out when it started?
Was your question about like how do we even start with the concept art?
Pretty much, yeah.
So I am personally not good at concept art. I'll readily say that. I always see myself as almost like an artisan. Like I love taking awesome concept art and making the 3D side. So I don't know how qualified I am to answer your question. But I feel like with concept art, the thing that I find the most useful is not like the technical execution or the little things. It's just like, I think I showed the first concept of Firewatch. It's super just sketchy. But sometimes those are the best concept art because to me, the feeling you get from looking at a piece of concept art is the thing that is most important. So, for example, when I keep saying like, oh, this is the key art that we use that is helpful for the team too, is because like that's the one thing before all the voice acting gets in and all that, or even before the music is composed, that is the one thing we can look at and all remind us like, oh, this is the feeling we're all aiming for. Because concept art is not just a visual target to me, it's about like, when I look at this piece of art, it gives me a certain feeling, and that everyone agrees that this is the feeling we're aiming for. So if you have concept art that answers that for you consistently, that's good concept art for your game. Like if the game has that, and it doesn't have to be like a feeling, right? Like it could just be like, oh, this is the, if it's like an action game, then it's like, oh, it's a sense of excitement. That can also be a feeling. So just make sure that it's in line with your game design and like the goals of the game, then it's good concept art. Cool, I think it's lunchtime now. So thank you very much, and please keep asking me questions.
Thank you so much, Jane.